with yet another Essence Strain
Hey,
build,
Zizaran
guys.
here with another League Start Essence Drain build.
Essence Drain?
Essence Strain.
It's back. Oh shit.
Hi, Zizaran here with Essence Blight of Contagion. It's kind of Essence Strain. So this is a Shadow, ascended as a Trickster, and for a lot of years I was pumping out Essence Strain Contagion guides. Then Chaos Dots got a lot of nerfs. Very low damage, and it was a functional build you could play the game with and map with, but it wasn't particularly good. And recently, Blight of Contagion came, and it was sort of usable to play with, especially if you wanted a really fast map clearing build. Now, in this patch, Blight has gotten a 42 or 44% more damage buff, which is huge. It is still not a S tier build. I would say it plays it around C tier. I think there's still room for improvements for Chaos Dot skills, and maybe they just don't really want that Chaos Dot skills have a ton of damage due to how good they are for clear speed. But either way, it looks incredible now compared to what it did before. So if you've been hungering for Chaos Dot skills for a while, I think now is a pretty okay time to play it. So what's nice about Blight of Contagion is it's basically Essence Drain but in a channeling skill. A problem with Essence Drain is before you would need Essence Drain and Blight to really do damage. Now you sort of, they're almost combined in a way where you use your Blight of Contagion and that contagious. That is contagious. So you would use Contagion first, and as you can see, it just spreads and clears the entire screen. This footage is by Shibo, who was playing this to level 100 in hardcore last season, and he also helped me go over it a little bit. I was helping both him and Devin with some tips and tricks for the build last season because I used to play this a lot. And Chaos Dot skills are always a lot of work to get decent damage on. But as you can see, both on bosses and mapping, it was okay last season, and what you're looking has been buffed by roughly 40%. So substantial damage buff, and we're also going to have additional things with mercenaries, etc., which could probably impact the build in the long run. And another thing worth mentioning, this is probably what would be my league starter if I wasn't racing, but the Berserker slams are just so ridiculous. They get like insane damage on a budget, get really good tank, and they come online so fast that since I am trying to do the hardcore solo self-on race, I don't really have much of a choice. This build should be able to get tier 17s and stuff like that, especially on softcore. It's not going to be a particularly good uber killer, and it'll probably not be the easiest tier 17 you've done, but should get all your watchstones and everything you need on a league start. The really good thing about this build is, for example, farming the Legion, where they break out multiple times, farming Delirium. Like, Shibo was farming lots of Delirium with this, and he showed us some of that on stream, and it's incredibly juicy. It's a very fun build for that. So I have slapped together a path of building. I'm a little tired, it's the day before launch, but I don't think I messed anything up. But either way, we're doing our normal step-by-step. So you do need path of building to follow along. If you don't know how it works, we have a video detailing how. Make sure you check that out. But yeah, step by step so that it's easy not to get lost. And I've set up loadouts too for like the maps and the min-max. So I couldn't really get it much above 7 million damage, which obviously is way more than enough for tier 17s and clearing and stuff. But it's not insane for bossing. And there are some unknowns with this build when it comes to gear. Kano Kulamak is getting reworked. I am actually assuming that overall this will be a buff, but there is a chance that there are just no more mods that affect Essence Drain. I doubt it, but that could happen. So we have some alternatives with weapons as well. I'll talk about that later. But Kano Kulamak will have 4 stats potentially in the next season, so it could be a lot better than what we have now. Skills-wise, we level with Venom Gyre in the start. I did a test run with Blight, and I do have that here too. Now, the problem with that is Blight, especially if you're on par, so let's say you're doing Brutus at level 8, you have quite little damage, and I'm an experienced player, so I was dodging his attacks, and it felt really clunky. So it might be okay for a player that's like, if you're going to be level 12 or 13 before Brutus, you're full clearing a lot, then you're probably okay. I do recommend Venom Gyre because the start is all about Chaos and physical anyway. So you get so much damage in the start, so just Venom Gyre with chance to poison and then Light Void Manipulation is going to be incredible in the start. You need to use daggers or claws for this, And then you still want to level Blight and Contagion because you're swapping at level 12 anyway. You are able to get a Wither and Spell Totem early as well, so that'll help. But either way, with Venom Jar, Brutus is a joke. And then you just swap to this setup. So early on while leveling, we are Essence Drain, Contagion, and Blight. So the way that works for clearing is you throw down Contagion and you do Essence Drain into it. For bosses, you're also going to be using Blight. So you do Essence Drain and Blight. You don't need Contagion on a boss. And you want to make sure your Wither Totem is down. And then we have a few different layouts here. So you do use Blight of Contagion as soon as you can. And yeah, you can get that in normal lab or cruel lab, but you are more likely to get a Merc lab because in Merc lab you have the additional option of turning a Transfigure Gem into a Transfigure Gem of that type. So you would put in a Blight Gem and it would turn into that. Now it is a 50-50 coin flip whether you get Atrophy or Contagion, but it shouldn't be too many hours. So in the early game, you only have one curse, so it's just Bane and Despair, but it just gives you a little bit of extra damage, and you can use a Control Destruction. This is obviously a very, very easy thing to drop for socket pressure. It's not very important. Spell Totem, especially getting quality on the 2 totem supports, is placement speed, so that's very important. Quality on these are nice too, but not as mandatory. We're going to be using Flame Dash. Obviously, you can use Frost Blink if you prefer that. And then auras wise, there is a lot of pains, which I have made a lot of notes for the build talking about like ascendancy issues. Like Occultist is really good for this too. Obviously the explosion can stop the contagion chains, but talking about different issues in the build, including restoration, and especially early maps, it's really hard to fit Malevolence. So you could use Skitterbots instead of Malevolence, or just have that extra mana free, might feel okay. But Skitterbots obviously will shock the enemies, making them take more damage, so that would be decent. You could also run Malevolence instead of Grace, but you're going to be a lot less tanky. We're using Contagion with Intensify in KoE and Item Rarity. Both Rarity and Intensify is sort of droppable for socket pressure reasons, like if you want to fit an Enlighten to fit in your auras, but especially Item Rarity, it's just free more stuff, free more gold, so it's good. Intensify you can drop, especially once at some point you get Arcane Expansion. And you could play around with a Clarity as well. This build sort of perpetually ends up having mana issues if you're going to try holding down your Blight of Contagion a lot, but even just 0.5 seconds of channeling it is enough to get full max 6 stacks, and especially once you're using Temporal Chains, it lasts for like 10 seconds. So I think a lot of people playing channeling builds are used to, like, you know, needing 3 or 4 seconds to channel as often as you can to do full damage. Ideally here, you should just need to channel for less than a second, then run around and dodge a little bit. Make sure your Wither Totem is up, make sure your Curse is up, but even if you're running out of mana a lot, it shouldn't be a huge issue. I have a mid-max loadout too, where we show off like the Awaken Gems, and there is Power at level 4 is definitely worth it, or if you have a Kano Kulimak with the +3 level of Socket to support skills, then a level 3 is worth it as well. But without that, efficacy is surprisingly good. So depending on like budgets and stuff, and if you don't have a Kane, then Empower is not necessarily worth it. That's also sort of a downside to Essence Drain, is that you run out of support gems. So you end up using Energy Leech support. Here you can see Bane as well. We do have the 4-link set up here, but once you're able to get a 6-link for it, so that does require Kano Kulimak to 6-link it obviously, then you can use Enfeeble and Control Destruction, or instead of Control Destruction, use this for like one of your auras or Clarity, etc. Like, you do have some socket pressure that you can be flexible with. You do really want to Unset Ring ideally though. Unset Ring is obviously less valuable if you're relying on an Enlighten. So let's talk about the other alternatives to Restoration. There are 2. And ideally you need one of these to be able to run the Malevolence, and you will still have quite little mana. Anointing Sovereignty is really good for mana restoration. That will give you this one, and that is an additional 12%. And if you can't do Sovereignty, this can help a lot with the Mana Mastery with 12% restoration here. On top of that, we can get a Loathing Essence on a helmet. It will be hard to get a really good one, but even just a Screaming Loathing, I think is 6 or 7% restoration, with Deafening being 10% restoration. And that's an actual explicit on the skill, so that's the teal highlighted text there. On top of that, you can get Eldritch Ichor to do restoration on helmet as well. So we have a few options there. If you get enough suppression from other sources instead of the Ichor here, you can get the, I think it's like Wither lasts longer, because at the moment I have 7% too much. I did end up going for Inveterate. I saw that a lot of players were going for not being spell suppression kept because they're mapping builds and just getting lucky suppress instead. Not a big fan of that. I really want 100% suppression, so I am going for Inveterate. Another thing worth pointing out as well, you can see early on in the mapping setup, we are all rare gear, so there's nothing like insanely crazy that you can't get on solo self-found, and even really good things for the build like Light of Meaning is farmable on SSF. Accumulator wand is really nice in my opinion for when you don't have good generation. So later you can get, for example, frenzy generation on chest would be a good one. There are medium clusters as well that have generation of endurance charges, for example. You can't really run blood rage on this build. Like, we have different options for actually generating that. But yeah, frenzy every charge for every 15 seconds works fine. We also just have overcharged will be more than enough for mapping. And then the reason that 100% charge duration is really nice is with an accumulator one, you'll have pretty much 100% uptime. They might fall off now and again, but it'll be remarkably well. And these you get from Heist. And honestly, the biggest downside of them is just the insane int requirement. I do talk about the stat requirements a little bit. You might need to take like 30 int here. There are int nodes up here, which is good for our chaos inoculation swap. And I'd like to point out, the build looks kind of weird as life before you get a cluster. So farming Delirium, really important for this build. That's because there's just simply not a ton of chaos damage nodes anywhere near us. They did add this cluster, which helps. And like here is int, which is just, you know, more int for easier requirements, but also int is energy shield. So early on with no cluster, you're sitting at like 4.7k life and 3.2k energy shield. We have ghost dance, so the energy shield is going to be recovering really, really nicely based on our evasion, and you will have higher evasion than this because we have a jade flask that we are popping. As well, I have recommended flasks, so make sure you use the ones recommended. You'll see that once we actually go to the maps layout, I've put in a bad cluster here just to illustrate that you don't need a perfect one, but you still want to use one. So even like 10, 11 passive skills and getting Unwavering Evil and Wicked Pile, which you can get by doing like Reforge Chaos from Harvest on a cluster, will get you a decent one. Then I don't really have this part here once we go to cluster, and you can see that I'd recommend switching to CI once you can have 6,000 energy shield. And especially in the hybrid gear, I want to point this out. I've chosen bad bases. There's no like Lich Circlet, there's no Necro Garb, etc. So these are the ones that you will get literally hundreds of, and they're tier 2 and tier 3. There's no reason not to go for the tier 1 stats on the ones you can when alteration spamming and recombinating. I just wanted to show that you can, even with very mediocre gear, get relatively good defenses. So I'm sort of undersold what you will actually have here. The only thing in the medium gear that's maybe too good, you would probably be more likely to have like 50 life. It's very unlikely that you're going to have like good life on it. But pretty happy with how it performs on very garbage gear. So it should be fun to play. And then in the min-max setup, there are some other options. Like you could get a really good wand, which personally, big fan of Accumulator for the charges, but you could use a Prophecy wand too for more damage. But this is what a virtually perfect wand would look like. You could have cast speed as well, or mana regen. And likely something like this, you'd want to start with a Fractured base. But obviously once you have the +1 spell, a lot of the other stats are a lot more deterministic. You could also go for a Veiled Orb hybrid spell damage thing, which makes the prefixes a little bit easier. Cane of Unraveling as well is a really good early game setup. It just works, and it's very common. And the fact that it can 6-link, so you could already start the Bane setup early, is nice. Replica Dragonfang, these aren't super easy to get whenever the build's popular. I wouldn't say Chaos Dot is in the state where like everyone's going to be playing it right now, so you should still be able to get one. But on solo self-found, very unlikely that you'll find a Blight one. Anathema, this is more farmable while wearing rarity gear. I usually find a few every league, 3 or 4 on solo self-found. The way it works is that when you just put it on, your curse limit is 3. And then if you have +1, then it's 4. If you have +2, then it's 5. So another thing I want to talk about is Graven's Secret. There's not crazy stuff that we can use on belt, so this actually ends up being really good. And even though we end up having more power charges than we need, with Craven's Secret, this is really nice because our power charges don't do anything anyway, and the absorption charges help you a little bit with recovery from elemental damage. And it's still giving us energy shield, it gives us mana and lightning wrist. And if you look at like the normal belt I'm using anyway, a Crusader belt, this would just be energy shield and resists. We have some options on gearing, it's quite flexible. This is something you would want a fractured base to craft too. And a lot of this other stuff, while being fairly min-maxed, is recombinator gear, so it's not too crazy. Jewels, you can use anything like spell damage, damage over time, chaos damage over time, damage. So you have a lot of stats you can go for there. Energy shield is good, and stats is good too, like strength and int. And then this is what a good jewel would look like. Unwavering, Evil, Wicked Pull, and Unholy Grace. And you don't even take the last one, so if the last one is something else, that's fine a lot of the time. Light of Meaning, obviously a lot of damage. Watcher's Eye is a decent amount of damage as well. And on medium clusters, we have some options. There is a channeling cluster, not a Chaos Dot one, that has like endurance charge while channeling. Medium clusters can have Unspeakable Gifts, which is the occultist explosion when dealing chaos damage. So more options there as well. Now, I don't necessarily recommend this for brand new players because chaos skills aren't the easiest compared to something like slams, right? Where you just maybe have one button and your gearing is very simple. It is definitely a build that requires a little bit more work, so I would say please have played Path of Exile a little bit more first. I wouldn't say this would be your first build ever. Should be able to help with any struggles of this build, and I would love to do this as my second build. We'll see a little bit on the Trothus gems as well, but I really would love to play Chaos Dot skills again. It would also be really cool to see if I can get Chaos Dot past 10 million damage, and I would love to do that. Either way, for those of you that have been really missing Chaos skills, it does look a lot better now, so pretty happy with that. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope it gives you a good start to 3.26. But either way, thank you so much for the support. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.